Things continued to get worse. Back to Germany. In the fall of 1939, Nazi officials expanded their death selection. They selected around 70,000 German people, not Jewish people, but German people, who had mental illness or a disability to be gassed to death in the so-called euthanasia program. Here's what that means in plain English. Did you have Down syndrome? We don't want you. We're going to kill you. Are you in a wheelchair? We don't want you. We're going to kill you. We're going for a perfect society. We don't want defective people. Now, again, this is not Mr. Kelley speaking this. This is Mr. Kelley sharing history with you of what happened so that we never repeat this again. Let's define euthanasia. Euthanasia is the painless killing of a patient suffering from an incurable and painful disease, and the practice is now illegal in most countries. In Germany, the preferred method of euthanasia was the gas chamber. I have a picture of one here from Auschwitz, one of the most famous death camps in Germany. And what they would do was put a bunch of people in this room and flood it with clear gas that you couldn't see, but you would breathe it in, and you would basically fall asleep and then die. And so if you were handicapped, if you had a mental illness, if you were Jewish, then you, according to the Germans, were suffering from an incurable disease and you needed to be killed. Of course, we know that is not the way we do things. It was a horrible practice, and again, we're learning this so that it never happens again. Eventually, some of the more prominent religious organizations in Germany protested this practice, and so in August of 1941, Hitler put an end to the euthanasia program. He did not put an end to the killing of Jews, he just put an end to the killing of those who were mentally ill or handicapped. However, he did not truly put an end to it. It still continued in secrecy, and by 1945, around 275,000 people who were handicapped, not just in Germany, but all over Europe, had been killed. As the killing continued, so did Hitler's conquest of world domination. In 1940, the German army expanded Hitler's empire in Europe as they conquered Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and France. In 1941, the conquest continued. The German army invaded the Soviet Union, which consisted of Russia and several smaller countries run by Russia. Mobile killing units called Einsatzgruppen murdered more than 500,000, that's 500,000, Soviet or Russian Jews and others, usually by shooting them. Beginning in September of 1941, every person that was designated as a Jew in German-held territory was marked with a yellow star, marking them as open targets. If you look at the picture to the right, you'll see a Jewish family, and each one is wearing a yellow star, so that if you see them, you don't have to wonder if they're Jewish. You know that they are, and they don't belong in the society. Not only were the Jews being killed and kept under harsh conditions, they were also being used for medical experiments. Since June of 1941, experiments with mass killing methods had been going on at the concentration camp known as Auschwitz near Krakow in Germany. In August of 1941, officials gassed to death 500 Soviet prisoners of war. That's the Russian army that was fighting against the Germans who had invaded. They used the pesticide Zyklon B to do that. Then the German army placed a huge order for the gas with a German pest control firm. And so that was obviously an indicator of what was coming to Germany. Moving back to Poland, in late 1941, the Germans began mass transports from the ghettos in Poland to concentration camps, and that was not a good thing. They were moving them out of the ghettos into a much more miserable place. They began with people deemed to be the least useful. If you were useful, they wanted you to keep working in the ghettos. But if you were not useful to their society, such as sick, old, weak, or very young, they were moving you out into some place you would be out of the way, and much worse was to come. Concentration camps were built throughout the new German Empire, and throughout this territory, the Germans began removing Jews from the ghettos and shipping them to the concentration camps for a much more miserable existence, and ultimately their death. This became known as the final solution by the Nazis. If the Jewish people were a substandard people, then perhaps they needed to be totally eliminated. And so they began the systematic deportations of millions of Jews to the killing centers or concentration camps, where they would kill them using the poison gas. On March 17, 1942, the first mass gassings started at the concentration camp known as Belzec. 5 more mass killing centers were built at camps in Poland, including Chełmno, Sobibor, Treblinka, Majdanek, and the largest of all, Auschwitz-Birkenau. From 1942 to 1945, Jews were deported to concentration camps from all over Europe. The heaviest deportations took place during 1942, when more than 300,000 people were deported from the Warsaw, Poland ghetto alone. The Nazis tried to keep the operation of these concentration camps a secret. Obviously, if you're trying to win people over to your side, you don't let them know that you're killing off major portions of your population. But it became virtually impossible to do this due to the large scale of killing that they were doing. I want to give you an idea of what it was like being on the transports from the ghettos to the concentration camps. And there's not any way that I could truly show you how horrible it was. But what I am going to do is show you 2 clips from a movie called Schindler's List. Schindler's List was produced in 1993, and it's based on a true story about a man named Oskar Schindler, who was a German factory owner. And he starts out looking for free labor and having some of the Jews shipped to his factories instead of to the concentration camps, because he wants the free labor to keep running his factories. But he ends up truly caring about the Jewish people as time goes on, and he saved over 1,000 Polish Jewish refugees during World War II. We're going to look at 2 different scenes. In one scene, the train is leaving in the summertime with a whole bunch of Jews, and you'll see that he plays a trick on the German soldiers. Says he wants the railroad cars washed down. What he's really doing is giving some water to the Jewish people, because they are literally burning up and dying of dehydration in these cars. They're so hot. The second scene shows a train arriving in Auschwitz, which is the most famous concentration camp where more Jews were killed than any other place. And the train has been sent there in error. It was supposed to go to his factory, and it went to Auschwitz instead. But it's the middle of the winter, and you'll see the harsh winter conditions. There's no heat on these cars, and then they're herded off the cars into the camp to be eventually killed. So let's watch these 2 scenes from Schindler's List.
Do you say we get your fire hoses out here and hose down the cars? Thank you. Indulge me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Well, bring the fire hoses.
Where's the fire?
That's it. On the roof. Good. On the window. Come on. That's it. Come on. That's it.
This is really cruel, Oscar. You're giving them hope. You shouldn't do that. That's cruel.
Come on. Try and reach the far end. The car. I've got some 200-meter hoses back in the mouth.
I have 20 meters at home in my garden.
We can reach the cars at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Don't forget the roof. On the roof, on the other side.
Sure. Every time the train stops, you open the doors, you give them water, yeah?
Jawohl.
Yeah. This car! This car!
You'll be pleased with the level of efficiency I get from these workers. Woodson, under my command, was the envy of every other commandant in the labor camp system. The prisoners, however,
Excuse me.
they would have rather been somewhere else.
The train with the women has already left Płaszów and will be arriving here very shortly. I know you've had a long journey, but it's only a short walk further to the factory, where hot soup and bread is waiting for you. Welcome to Brinlitz.
Wir sind schon. Beans are the best part. I don't like beans. Beans and meat and potatoes and bread. That's not the way you make chun. Exit short? Yes. I don't like. No, you don't. What do you like? I like caviar. Caviar. So, one day on the fire. One day. 30, 35, 40, 45.
They're in Auschwitz. The train was never routed here. A paperwork mistake.